What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Vultures Row podcast, episode number 7. I'm your host, Joey Bonsanti. Sitting across the monitor from me, Tony Vegas. It's a little empty here today. No Pat. He's down in Florida golfing. But we do have a squad of 2, which should get the job done this week. Tony, how's it going? How you feeling, man?
I'm doing great. Still recovering from Friday, believe it or not. What an absolute blast! We both went to the Badlands live show, and we got to meet a bunch of just Jets Twitter personalities. Obviously, the Badlands guys: Connor, Joe, Meeks, Will, all those guys. Got to meet Connor Hughes in person, Zach Rosenblatt, Jake Asman, Matt O'Leary, all these guys. Man, it was so much fun to really put like a name to not a name, but I don't know. It's different seeing these guys in real life after consuming, Jets content since I was literally like 15 years old. Absolute blast. But feeling a little better, now that we're midweek and pumped to continue talking about the NFL draft, man. It can't come soon enough at this point.
I know. It's pretty crazy. We're like 9 days out now. Before we get into anything, again, thank you to the Badlands crew. We are on their feed as of Saturday at noon, so go check that out if you can. The full episode is on YouTube, so super pumped about that. I thought the episode was actually really fun.
Yeah.
So again, another shout out to them. Friday night was a freaking blast. It was a fun night. I'll leave it at that. Really kudos to them though. They put on a great show, and it was freaking packed to the brim in there.
Yeah.
I think it was Printers Alley in Times Square, and it was just absolutely packed to like 350 Jets fans there.
I can't believe they fit that many people in there. It's like crazy. And it wasn't like too packed. It was really, really well done. Kudos to those guys. They absolutely killed it. And nobody on like Jets Twitter has done anything like that. So really, really well done.
Yeah, a lot of like different people there too. Like you'd mentioned, like YouTube content creators, you had beat reporters. So it was just a super fun time.
Dude, we also saw some fans of the show, which was probably the highlight of the night for us. We had a couple people come up to us, and obviously there were you got hey, it's Tony Vegas, whatever, all this stuff. But the people that were like, all right, hey, I listened, to your guys' podcast, and I really enjoy it. That was really, really cool to hear. Obviously we're not like this huge podcast, but even to hear like a handful of people, say they enjoy it means the world to us. And again, can't thank you guys enough for supporting the show. We're just 3 guys trying to, shoot the shit and talk Jets. And it's an unbelievable community.
Yeah, that was, I'm not going to lie, I almost forgot about that. That was probably one of the coolest moments of the night, selfishly enough.
Yeah.
Just having someone come up to you and say that, oh, wow, like just notice you and, compliment your stuff. And we're always open to feedback. Like I've said before, I even asked him if he thought we should do anything differently. He said, no, just keep doing what you're doing. So
what is he going to be like? Hey, yeah, you should stop talking so much, dude.
Hey, I would take the feedback and run with it. That's all I'm going to say. But for this show, me and Tony wanted to do something a little fun. It kind of reminded us of the back in September, October OG Twitter Spaces when we first started doing them together.
Yeah, it was the start of it all.
It really was. This is kind of like the OG thing. So we wanted to do something a bit different today. So we're actually going to open the show up with some superlatives and end it with some questions. We're going to do some draft-specific superlatives and then some Jets team-specific superlatives. We're not going to give one each. We're going to kind of come together and try to get a solid answer. So again, always tweet at us and let us know what how you guys would rank them and who you would pick for something like this. Do you want me to jump right into it?
Let's jump right into it, brother.
All right, let's start off with the draft here. These are draft superlatives. So I'll ask the question, we'll discuss a little bit. Most likely to become a fan favorite. To keep this simple, let's keep it in the first round. So we're assuming that we're picking within the first round. This could be a trade back. This could be at 7. So I'm giving you the full range from 1 to 32 here.
Okay.
So most likely to become fan favorite, I'm thinking of someone who, obviously probably not an offensive lineman. Probably someone who's catching the ball. I don't really know of many you think Mangold and Diebrich probably for fan favorites on the offensive line. And I don't think we've had a cornerstone left tackle or center in a very long time. So
seems like we do now though, which is nice. Maybe the fan favorite draft guy, maybe he wears number 44. Maybe he went to Penn State. It's obviously Tyler Warren. He would be such a fun toy within the offense. And I feel like we haven't had like a fun. Garrett Wilson's like a really, really good receiver. And, he's the first like legitimate number one receiver threat we've had since Brandon Marshall in 2015. But to have a guy that has that like best player on the field mentality, he can catch the ball, he can steamroll a motherfucker, which is it just seems like to watch him play in college, it's tough to not be like, all right, this guy's going to be really, really fun in the NFL. And I could, my dad's like an old school Jets fan. I just know like he would be like, "Mano, this guy's a great football player." Like, he's just like a hard nosed guy, but he's also a really talented pass catcher. They could use him in a bunch of different ways. So I feel like that one's easy. I mean, unless you disagree.
I would say, yeah, probably him, or maybe like if it was like a Mason Graham, potentially someone who could like wreck a game. But to my mind, it was Tyler Warren. So I think he could do it all. If he becomes like a very versatile pass catcher and blocker on the offensive line, I think that's a
It's a
like
treat, dude.
he has like the golden ticket to become a fan favorite. So.
Yeah, it's a treat. We always take the well. Recently, it's been like Olu. It was like the adult pick. The fun one would have been Brock Bowers, but it's the adult pick. If they go Tyler Warren, that's gonna be a fan favorite right there.
Most likely to get booed, then end up being great. I'll start here.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you might agree with me. I think it's going to end up being like a guy that on the defensive side of the ball, probably like a Jalen Walker type.
Yep.
I just look at what are the biggest holes on the team: pass catcher, right tackle, safety, and maybe linebackers lower on the tier. But if they end up picking someone at 7, or even if they trade back and take someone like that, I could see Jets fans being very unhappy and being like, "Why?" Blah, 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 until the guy balls out. If that actually happens, then everyone would change their mind. But I think I could see like a linebacker getting booed if we take them as high as like 7.
Yeah, Jalen Walker is an absolute animal of a football player. He's going to be really, really good. It's just we don't, we have Quincy, we just paid Sherwood. It would be one of those picks where it's like, okay, I kind of hate this. Like, this isn't. We're so locked in on an offensive player at pick 7. So if they went out and they took a linebacker, which like isn't one of our biggest like weaknesses, I could definitely see a lot of the fan base scratching their head on it. But I mean, dude, Jalen Walker is going to be a very good NFL player, and you can't trade back and get him. I'm pretty confident he's going directly after us to Carolina. But yeah, I think that's a pretty easy one. I would say Jalen Walker as well.
All right, let's move on. I like this one a lot. Before we we're doing the draft superlatives, and then we break into more of like a team-wide superlative across the current roster. So we'll do one more draft, which is most likely to break Jets Twitter. I'll let you go here. I think I have a name in mind.
There's a couple you can go with. If we're picking at 7, that's where we're going to assume we're staying at 7 with this pick.
Sure. Yep.
I mean, Ashton Genty, right? If he's there, I think that would be one of the most controversial picks they could make. I mean, he's an absolute stud, like generational running back prospect. He's going to be an absolute beast. If he ends up being the next Saquon Barkley, you're going to look back and be like, all right, well, what? That's not a bad pick. But you just know a lot of the fan base is going to be like, if they take a running back there, it's, we have Chugs blocking for him at right tackle, all this stuff. So, I mean, he's just such like a polarizing player. And you kind of see like, I'm reading Discord, I'm reading Twitter, all this stuff where he has some like diehard fans in his corner that really, want to take Genty, but there's also people that are like, it's not responsible to do so. So I would probably say he's just the most polarizing prospect at 7.
Yeah, I would say him. And then the other, I'm blanking on his name. Is it Shamar Stewart out of A&M?
Oh yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah,
there's a lot of smoke around that.
That's an even better one.
Someone who has 4 sacks in his collegiate career, whatever it is. It's a very low number. Where the physical, makeup of the player is so polarizing, but the actual production on the field is so low. And that's one of those picks where you're like, this is how the new regime is starting with this pick at 7. So I would say it's between him. At least with Genty, there's a ton of upside, like how much you could use him in that offense. And
he's going to be good.
and he's just going to be filthy. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like he's just going to be a good football player. With someone like with Stewart, it's doesn't have a lot of production, and you're just banking on physical tools at number 7. That's
Oof.
crazy. I could see Jets Twitter just. There's a lot of times where Jets Twitter is like at each other's throats, and
That
then
would be it.
there's times where Jets Twitter is just all in accordance. Just I hate this. I hate this. So I could see that. Honestly, there's pretty much every scenario ends up being like that because
Yeah,
Jets
well,
Twitter is nuts.
Gase was one of them where we were all on the same team pretty much. Aaron Rodgers was a very polarizing one this past offseason.
Definitely.
Zach Wilson, I think we all kind of bought into him, but he was. It's just so funny how
But even
like.
like you think about the Darnold, like get rid of Darnold, keep
Yeah,
Darnold.
yeah,
Like
great point.
everyone was like torn apart by that. So
It's
same
so
same
funny
thing
how
with Rodgers now though. Like
we
keep
pin
Rodgers.
ourselves against each other, man, and sometimes we're all just like, "Fuck this." Basically,
I know.
it's pretty funny. It's honestly the most hilarious fan base in the NFL, and I'm so happy to be a part of it because there's no lack of entertainment.
And then on Twitter every day, it's just like if I want Mason Graham and you want Tet McMillan at number 7, it's like no one. If that's your opinion, that's it. There's if I want Tet, that's it. That's the only right answer. If you want Mason Graham, that's the only right answer. Like
There
there's
are
no.
some reasonable people out there, though. There's
There
some
are.
intelligent, smart, people.
I'm
But
just
it's so funny, dude. I love it.
Anyways, let's move on from the draft and get into the current team superlatives. So
Okay.
most likely to be mic'd up gold every week, meaning like he is the best player that can be mic'd up. He's an absolute show when you go watch the NFL clips a week after for like 3 minutes.
I'll let you take this one, buddy.
There's a couple. I mean, like I think Quincy's a really good mic'd up guy that I love just watching.
He's fun.
A guy that I'm more curious about is Andre Cisco, mostly because of just how much of a dog he's labeled in quotes. I'd really like to see like what he's like at that safety position and just like I guess how he would sound mic'd up. That's just the guy that popped into my mind first. I don't know if you have a different answer, but I'd probably pair those two guys together. I love Quincy mic'd up.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's funny you say Quinn. I was gonna say Quinnen. I love Quinnen mic'd up, man. He's just an awesome human being. Just a southern, like really nice kid guy, but at the same time, you have him yelling at Aaron Whitecotton like he's a competitor. I mean, but he's always a treat to get him mic'd up. And I agree for newcomers, I would say Andre Cisco. I've heard that he's got a little bit of dog in him, and I've really been wanting that on the backside of our defense. Get a little shit talk going, man. Like it's been a soft football team for so long. So for somebody to like, I don't know, kind of pack a punch and talk your shit, basically, I'm all for that. So I would agree.
All right. This is kind of like it's not like actually literal when I say comeback player, but who's most likely to win comeback player of the year for the Jets? So I guess it's more of like a bounce back year statistically. Like who do you see who had like a meh year in 24 that comes back in 25 and you're like, damn.
Okay, there's a few, and they're all on defense, right? All right, we're gonna take Jermaine Johnson out of this because he got hurt. Is that
Yep.
fair to say?
Yep. I have a guy that I have in my mind that I would,
It's either Quinnen or Sauce, right? Because both are great players, and there's few people on Twitter that are like, Quinnen is an overrated guy. No, dude, he's an absolute beast. We saw this guy rack up 12, 13 sacks a couple years ago, and we just don't, when you put Javon Kinlaw next, I'm going to go with Quinnen. When you put Javon Kinlaw next to somebody, and the poor guy's eating double teams all day because Javon Kinlaw is being a selfish player trying to make ridiculous moves to get to the quarterback to get 3 years, $45 million in free agency. It worked out for him. But I think they're gonna get that defensive tackle next to Quinnen that will at least help in run support, so he's not the only player that can stop the run on the defensive line, eat up some blocks, and free him up to get to the quarterback finally. You're going to have Jermaine Johnson back as well. So, you're going to have two solid edge rushers. They can't just, focus on Quinnen Williams on the inside. So I'm going to go with Quinnen Williams, and you're going to tell me why you're going to go with Sauce, because I feel like that's where you were going.
Well, I had a package. I had Sauce and Michael Carter II. Michael Carter II was battling injuries all last year, and I think
Yes.
They extended him midseason. I think he's well deserving of that. One of the best nickel corners in the league, and I think they both gonna have really big bounce back years. I mean, the Sauce hate is completely unwarranted. I understand he had a down year last year, But you don't just come into the league, get two all pros, and then magically fall off a cliff. I think a lot of that is due to coaching. I think that there was a lot of there's a giant rift between Sala leaving and Ulbrich going to head coach, and there's not really a defensive presence there. So I think Sauce bounces back and has a really good year for the Jets in his fourth year.
I like your Michael Carter point. I've heard this wasn't me. It was like I just know he was battling like a really serious injury and probably shouldn't have been playing. Um, so that's a really good one.
All right, we got two more here. Most likely to scream "I'm him" after a 4 yard gain.
Brees.
Brees Hall.
He's gonna do this. He's gonna run for 4 yards and then go like this. You know when he does that when he gets like tripped up.
Yes.
Because all last year he was getting arm tackled and going down, and then he would get up and go like this. Like I was this close to breaking that one off. And it's like okay, like it's fun when you do that when you break one off once every 3 games, but when you're not breaking them off, it's like all right, dude, like let's get it going here. I think Brees Hall. I don't know. Justin Fields doesn't strike me as that type of guy. And neither does Braylon Allen or Isaiah Davis. So Brees, I'd say.
I'd go. I'm gonna go Brandon Stevens. I know we don't know
I like
really
this.
really much about him, but I think a lot of the negative feedback on him is that he doesn't really turn his head around. So I could
He's gonna hit him
totally
with that.
there's gonna be a ball thrown 6 yards out of bounds, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
so he's totally gonna do that. Again, for all we know, he could be a really good cornerback for us. But for the sake of the superlatives, I'm gonna roll with him.
Trust the process, man.
Last one here. Most likely to start a podcast before making a Pro Bowl. Really good question here. Or superlative, I should say. we got to come up with one here. I think we both have a feeling as to what we're going to say.
Lazard?
That's what I was going to say.
Alan Lazard, dude, who still is a Jets player at this point, and it seems like he's going to stay. So it's time to start the Alan Lazard, conversation. I mean, the guy, he wants to be a model. It seems like he wears all these crazy, he's bouncing the soccer ball around. I could totally see him. Maybe we can have him on as a guest and ask him why the hell he dropped so many friggin' balls. But I could totally see him as one of those guys that after his playing career is done, he's going to get into media or something like that. I could totally see it.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add there. I mean, that's just who I was going to say. And honestly, if he sees this by some small chance and wants to come on, please, we'd love to have you on.
Hey, Alan, I was happy when we signed you. So
me too. And again, there's been bright spots with Alan Lazard. I mean, let's not get it twisted. He has had some nice catches, but there's been some pretty bad moments as well.
Former Packers wide receiver 1.
Yes.
By the way.
Yes. And also when I double checked to make sure he made a Pro Bowl or didn't make a Pro Bowl before this on Google, it said that he was a Rams wide receiver in his rookie year. Not sure what Google was saying on that one, but
I thought it was ChatGPT might be a little dating.
So now we're going to move on. Obviously, we had Tony ask some questions to the wide range of followers across Twitter. So I'm just going to kind of go through some funny quick ones and then some really good ones. Which way do you prefer to start? Do you want to start off with some quick hitters or some serious ones?
Let's keep it serious first, and then we'll get into the funny ones.
Sure. So let's go down here. All right, here we go. Rank the likelihood of the following: Quinnen Williams finishing his contract in New York, Brees Hall getting a new contract, or Jamian Sherwood living up to his contract. This one comes from Still Gucci. Tony.
Still Gucci. Shout out Still Gucci. Brees Hall getting a second contract, I would say is number 3 for me. Then I would say Jamian Sherwood, number 2, living up to his contract. I think he will, but I definitely think that Quinnen's going to finish his contract here. Brees Hall's definitely not getting a second deal with us, I don't think.
I would agree.
That's an easy 3 for me. Sherwood, he's 25. He's a good tackler. We're all pretty excited that he's back. I think we would have been a little pissed off if we let him, a 25-year-old homegrown player walk. And Quinnen, like we said before, man, he's still a great player. And he's really, really expensive. So I think it's going to be a little bit hard to trade him. Or the dead cap would be so big that, he's not like a cut candidate. So that would be my ranking for those 3.
I hate to be boring, but I'm going to agree with you. I just think that I don't see a world in where Quinnen is not finishing this contract out with the team, especially because I feel like he'll have a connection with Glenn, and I think he'll like this new regime. Again, it could all go to shit for all we know. That's just a gut feeling. And I feel very strongly that Brees Hall is not getting a second contract with this team. I
Yeah.
do think Sherwood's going to live up to the contract. I just don't know how great he's going to be. Like, do I think that he's going to be like one of the best linebackers in the league? Probably not. But again, time will tell with that. Let us, let us, let's move on.
Lettuce.
Let
I
us
had a
move
salad
on.
for lunch.
If the Jets were to trade down, what is the furthest slot you think they go down to? This is coming from Texter Manley. I love this question.
I think 21. I think that would be the lowest they would go. And it's not because they're like looking for a specific prospect. I think the Steelers at 21 are the most likely to come up for a quarterback. And you see some, we're going to get into this actually a little later because somebody else asked it, but like Panthers are open to business to trade back with the news about Derek Carr, which, I mean, it's a real, development, in my opinion, that they all of a sudden do not have a quarterback option outside of Spencer Rattler, which is going to be a really hard sell for that fan base. So their likelihood of taking, a quarterback went way up, in my opinion. I think it's going to be one of Shador. I think they're going to take Shador. I think that's where Shador ultimately ends up going, is to New Orleans. If one of us or the Panthers don't move back, but I would say 21. I think that's it. If the Steelers want to get ahead of New Orleans and take Shador Sanders or Jackson Dart, if that's how their board is, I think that's probably the furthest.
This next week's going to be very telling for this question because, by next Wednesday, if their Steelers don't have an answer on Rodgers, I really do feel like they may just say, all right, we're moving on. Because at this point, for the past 3 years, Rodgers really hasn't done all that much for a team to be waiting and waiting and waiting when their voluntary offseason starts in a week. And the draft. So I would agree with you. I think 21 is probably the furthest I could see the Jets moving back. And they honestly, if that was the case, they'd probably get a damn haul for that pick.
Dude,
So
in this draft, we talked about this last week. I mean, that would be something to consider because you'd at least get a first round pick and then probably a little bit more to move up. What is
you
that? 14 spots?
I would probably say you get their 21. Obviously, you get a second rounder this year and maybe a first rounder next year,
Dude,
something along those lines. You've got
that's a
to at
game
least,
changer.
yeah. And what? So maybe you say, okay, we get that second. We have 2 seconds. You could even maybe trade back up into the first round if you want and get two
Dude,
first round picks.
yeah, or you sit at 21, you take like Josh Connolly from Oregon or a different tackle, and you say, "You know what? This is our right tackle, and next year we can, build around Fields, build around a, trade up for a quarterback." It opens up so many possibilities. So if they're not considering it and it's on the table, that's a puzzling move to me.
That's definitely going to be exciting. And then we're going to go to that question that you were looking at before. So this is Roman Ebron. With the Panthers news that they are open to moving down from 8, does that open up the Jets to consider the move down? What are your guys' thoughts on picking up the extra picks? Would you pick if you stay on the clock? Who aren't you taking that you would trade down?
Who aren't I taking if we trade down? What does that mean?
I guess, is there I guess it's more like, is there a position that you really don't want to see the Jets take if they move down to like a 21? Would you be mad? Or if they move down to 21, are you feeling like whichever way you go, you kind of feel comfortable with that?
I would hope again. I just would just hope they take like a receiver or a tackle and just get like an offensive contributor because you know we're banking on pick 7 to either be a tackle or a weapon because we don't have anything there right now. So I would hope they still do that just with like I don't know a little bit less of a prospect. Um, but I don't think the drop off in this draft is like too drastic to where I'd be like, losing sleep over drafting like, the third or fourth best tackle to, Membu. I want Membu really bad, but I just think I don't think Carolina being open to it changes like our plans because I guess the Saints could move up. I don't know. I don't know. I just I wouldn't be pissed either way. I think it's definitely something they should consider.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I guess the first part of that question we kind of answered too about picking up the extra capital. I'd
Yeah,
totally be
absolutely.
down for that.
Slam dunk.
So we have a couple more serious ones here. Where did this one go? Who records more sacks this year, a healthy JJ or Will McDonald? I think this one is probably Will McDonald just based on the fact that healthy JJ probably won't return till about quarter to halfway through the season, I would say he's probably not going to be 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So Will McDonald really shut me and a lot of other Jets fans up last year after complaining, taking him within the top 20 a couple years ago. So I would say Will McDonald.
I agree with you, but I think I think JJ's the better player
Agreed.
if he's healthy, but it's just such a question mark because Achilles with that position too, right? Like, that a heel for a pass rusher is one of the most critical parts of, their body of work. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he kind of recovers. And you're absolutely right. He's not going to be back week one like old, Jermaine Johnson. It's going to be a little bit of a process, like we see a lot with these other players. Like tearing your Achilles is the new ACL, in my opinion. Like when Adrian Peterson tore his ACL, that was like this, huge deal when he came back and he was still really good. Achilles is like the new ACL where it's a tough injury, man. It really is. And I really, really want JJ to bounce back and be the player that he was, but it's going to be a question mark. I agree. Will McDonald.
All right, we're going to move on to some quicker questions here. Rob, Jake, what are your thoughts on maybe the Jets taking a safety at 42? I personally love that. I don't know where you stand on that, though.
At 42, man, pick the player I want at 7, and then I can talk myself into anybody at 42, really. I mean, I'd be cool with taking, we haven't had good safeties in so long, so if they decide to go that route at 42, I won't sit here and complain, especially if I get, Membu at 7. I'd be happy.
Screwed up at pass catcher, but I mean that's I guess
Yeah.
we're worried about that. That's the only pull and pause there. It's just if we do take a Membu in round 1 and not a Warren, and then we take another like a defensive player, then I don't know what their plan is at pass catcher unless
Third round, baby.
I guess so. Gotar says, "Do you ever miss Jeremy Curley like I do?" Weirdly enough, Gotar, yes, I really do.
I do too.
Jeremy Curley is a phenomenal Jet, man. Really, really good Jet.
I wanted to use him in the Immaculate Grid the other day. I just couldn't think of another. What other team did
Niners.
he play on?
He played
Was
on
he
the
on the
Niners.
Niners? That's like a really good pull for that game. I love. I love that. Like Case Keenum, did he just sign with the Bears? That's a fantastic Immaculate Grid answer. Case Keenum, Bears, someone else, use that.
Last one here. This is only going to be funny if you are watching on YouTube and not listening. It comes from Action Jack, great friend of the show. What would you do if I was there right now? Ah ha ha ha. And then I'll show. This is the GIF or GIF that he sent. If you're watching
Who is
on
that
YouTube,
guy?
I don't know who that is. It's a random GIF. Jack's a great follow on Twitter at ActionJack69.
Absolutely, check him out, man. He's great.
Check him out. That's the boy right there. So that pretty much does it for today's episode. Again, thank you guys for the support. I feel like this is a really fun, change it up kind of episode with just Tony and I. First duo that we've had in the Vultures Row era. So appreciate that, and we kept it under 30 minutes. So I'm happy with that.
Oh yeah, dude. Thank you guys so much. It felt like a space, man. It really did. When we used to do them, we would talk a bunch of random shit for 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'd start letting people up. We do have to connect with the Twitter followers at some point. We have to get back to it. We're still figuring all this out because this is like, it's taken up a bunch of our time in terms of, after work, all this stuff. So
the podcast is taking up our Twitter spaces time. Essentially,
I'm going to tell my boss that in my next performance review.
Yeah, hey boss, I'm gonna need a little time after work. My podcast is taken up from my Twitter Spaces time, and I'll get my work done. So,
too good.
And don't forget to follow at NYJ_Vultures Row on Twitter, and we're also on TikTok, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, literally everywhere.
Patreon,
Patreon. Yep, get it all. And we do appreciate the support as always.
And check out our episode on Badlands feed. Shout out them again. That was super fun to do. We have another one coming out after the draft in May. That's already set up. So, great guys. Check them out, and looking forward to it. We might record again later this week. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, stay tuned. We could have more content coming just based on what happens in the next
We're
week.
very
And
organized people over here.
of course, yeah, we have a very segmented day that we drop every single week for
Oh
the
yeah,
past seven
dude.
weeks. We'll get it under control, we promise. But as always, thank you guys, and we'll see you next week or maybe sooner on the Vulture Show. Peace.